All right, you already know who I am. You already know what we're doing on this video. You clicked on it. You know the description. You know the title. I'm not going into any weird graphic intro. It is what it is. So, DD-WRT, networking with a Linux operating system. Now, let me be very clear about something. I've said this before. I am not teaching you Linux, okay? If you want to learn Linux, you can go read the Hackers for Linux or Linux for Hackers book. Not even a full 60 seconds into the video, and I already messed it up. But that's okay. And then there's also, you can study for Linux. You can study Linux if you study for the LPIC, which is what I did, the Linux Professional Institute certification, which is great. Linux is really important in cybersecurity. There are a ton of resources out there. You could go do the capture the flag over the wire bandit challenges. That teaches a lot about Linux and how to use Linux and how to navigate it. I am not teaching Linux, okay? However, this is a Linux-based operating system for routers. So, not teaching you Linux, but it is Linux-based, all right? We're going to be doing everything in the GUI. So, and we're going to discuss a little bit of networking. Now, let me tell you, networking is really important when it comes to cybersecurity, and I had to learn the hard way. You have to know the basics of networking. There's actually a great course out there by Heath Adams. I'm sure some of you have probably heard of him. He actually recently did an interview on David Bumble's channel. But Heath at TCM Security has an amazing course on practical ethical hacking, and in it he actually talks about networking and specifically like what the basics behind networking, what subnets are, and why it's important for cybersecurity, especially if you're doing any type of security research or pen testing or ethical hacking in cybersecurity, and that's great. But basically, networking is very important. You have to understand networking. You have to understand, just like you have to understand the basics of what an operating system is and computer hardware and, the basics behind tech, networking is a part of that. So you have to have those foundational aspects to be able to understand other further aspects in cybersecurity. I just posted a couple articles on Nmap recently, and Network Mapper is one of the biggest, most widely used tools for security researchers. If you're going to do any type of security research, you have to know Nmap. And that goes for both blue team and red team, because I can tell you from experience, guess what? Red has had to do red team stuff for his blue team job. So, something to know. Maybe your company, maybe your firm, or maybe your team does not have the funds to pay for a pen testing team. So guess what? You've got to do vulnerability assessments. And that means using some of the same tools they do. And it's also really important to understand both sides of things. It's not, I don't think it's important to be just red team or just blue team. I think it's important to have knowledge of how things work on both sides. You don't need to be a complete master or have all the knowledge, but at least know some of it, right? And because if you can understand how something works on the blue team side of things, you can understand how to break into it on the red team side. And if you understand how to break into it on the red team side of things, you understand how to protect against it on the blue team side of things. And that's our goal, right? In cybersecurity, information and intelligence security, our goal is to try to protect as much as we can. And, defend against exploitation. So we're all supposed to be working together. It should be one or the other. That diatribe aside, DD-WRT is an operating system for a router, okay, for networking. And one of the reasons why this has been so important and why I loved working with it is not only did it give me insight into how networking works and really how to secure a network, because securing a network is a lot different than securing a workstation or an endpoint or a device, a computer. Securing a network is a whole different ballgame. You've got to understand networking. So one of the things I loved about DDWRT is its functionality. So if you've done anything with like any type of sysadmin or any type of work on operating systems, especially in cybersecurity, the more control you have, the easier it is to do your job. Especially because every security instance and every every context is different. It's always contextual is what I'm trying to say. So, the assets and the way to protect those assets for one company is going to be completely different than the setup and the way to protect the assets for another company. It's not just blanket across the board. I know that there's NIST. I know there's standard and regulation frameworks like HIPAA, and for credit processing, there's PCI. I understand that. But they just kind of lay the foundation on what's considered best practices for security. Every setup is going to be different. So the more access you have to tools, the better it's going to be, right? If I just have a Nessus scanner to do vulnerability scanning, that's one thing. But if I also have a scanner along with like the Metasploitable framework and other tools where I can see if it's actually exploitable and be able to research vulnerabilities and things like that, gives me a lot more insight, allows me to do more. And that's kind of what DD-WRT is for routers. A lot of routers, it's not super difficult. Basically, you have a router, you find out the IP address of the gateway, you can log in. Almost all of them you can log in through the web, right? You just have to know the username and the password, and you can make configurations on your router. Heck, even the AT&T routers, I can log in there and, see an entire list of all the devices, all their MAC addresses that are attached to a network. And I can make changes. I can prioritize things on the network. But a lot of routers, even routers that you purchase at like a computer parts store, they don't come with full functionality. They are limited only by what the operating system provides. And so DD-WRT is really amazing because one of the things it does is it basically increases the capability of a router. So, for example, I have a router. It came with a stock operating system, proprietary operating system. It's been swapped out with DD-WRT. And now the router that has DD-WRT has VLAN capabilities. So virtual LAN capabilities. That means I can segregate the network in the ways that I need to, which is great for security, right? It adds layers of defense. And it also has VPN capabilities. So I can set up a VPN in the router so that way, wherever I am, like let's say I have a network attached storage device where I keep all my files, because I don't want to keep them in the cloud. And that's at my home base, and wherever I am, I can VPN into my router and have access to my machines at home, my network attached storage at home, whatever else I need access to at home. That's a big deal. And that's what DD-WRT does. The other thing about DD-WRT is that it's open source and it's constantly patched and constantly updated, and that's a good thing. So as we know, in the field of security, whenever those updates and patches come out, we got to get them in. Because what that means is that there is a vulnerability that was discovered about an operating system or a program or an application or whatever, and they're releasing an update to be able to patch it. So DD-WRT has a whole community behind it and this is the website, what I've got pulled up right now. This is dd-wrt.com. This is where you go. You can look at the router database. You can look at your router, see if it's compatible, see what version of DD-WRT you can install on your router, see how to install it without, bricking the router, for example. And there's tons of forums, tons of support. And every time a new bug or vulnerability is discovered, it's pushed through the community here and then it's patched. And so that's the one thing is you got to make sure you check for updates. You got to make sure you're doing the firmware updates with DD-WRT, just like you do on any workstation or on any computer, right? You've got to do those updates to keep it secure. A lot of routers, a lot of proprietary operating systems on routers don't do that. I had an AT&T router for a long time and I never knew, and again, I was new to computers, much less cybersecurity at the time, but I never knew that I had to log in and actually force the AT&T router to check for updates, right? That was unknown to me. So it was probably like a year's worth of firmware updates that weren't getting done. And even then, like those updates don't come out that often from proprietary software. DD-WRT, they try to patch it and they try to do it all the time. So that's the point of this video, is to show you what DD-WRT is, why it's secure, why it's so important, and really just how to secure a network with it. You know, if I'm going to be honest with you, any router I get, if it's just a year or two old and it's got proprietary software on it, I'm going to want to see if I can get DD-WRT on it, because I'm going to want full functionality. But basically, go to the website, check this out, you know, see if your router is good with it. Obviously, like, you know, what I'm talking about is a router that you have purchased. Don't take your internet service provider's router that you're not supposed to permanently mess with and try to put DD-WRT on it. You're not supposed to do that. This is like for routers and devices that you can buy from like a computer parts store, like a Nighthawk or a Netgear router, you know, or an R7000. Wow, I am nerding out. Holy shit. All right, so let's jump in. This right here is DD-WRT. It's a Linux-based operating system. I am not teaching you Linux. I am just teaching you DD-WRT. Okay? Look at all these things. Look at all this stuff we can do. Right here, WAN setup. I've got it set up to where it receives an IP address based on DHCP. Look at what I can do. I can do static. I can disable it. I can do tons of different stuff. And you know what? iPhone tethering, Android tethering. Wow. And you know what? If you don't know what any of this is, that's what Google's for. That's another thing I learned too, by the way. Just if you don't know what something is, Google is your best friend. Stop, pause, go look something up on Google, please. All right. So right here, I can manually configure the local IP address of the router, and I can put in a gateway, and I can put in a local DNS. That's amazing. I can even change the router name. I can change it to, you know, what's code red, because that's us. Or I can not change it. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, did I do something bad? I may have done something bad. Okay, so one thing to know. Let me see if I can fix this. There we go. So one thing to know is at the bottom here, it says save, apply settings, cancel changes. There we go. Now I'm going to make this big again. All right, because you couldn't see those buttons at the bottom. So that's really important. With DD-WRT, whenever you do something, you can save the changes, but it doesn't mean the changes have actually applied. So you need to save it and then hit apply settings to actually cause the settings to take effect. All right. So that's what's important to know. And that's great because it means that you're not just making configurations on the router and then all of a sudden you're screwed. You may have screwed up the network, because I can tell you networking is not easy. Networking, when you screw something up with networking, it is not fun. So when we think about cybersecurity, we think about the confidentiality of data. That's great. We think about the integrity of data. Duh. But we also have to think about availability. And with networking, that's really important, because you could make a change on a network and cause it to all of a sudden not network properly. And it's not that a computer or an application on a computer isn't available. It's that the whole network isn't available. So you can't do anything on the network. And that's important, because the network is the foundation of how all of our machines connect to the internet, communicate with one another, are able to do things, are able to process work. Now that we're, you know, more and more of us are moving towards the cloud. So being able to be cautious with your changes and settings in DD-WRT is a great cybersecurity thing. But here's another thing. Look at this on the right. Look at this. Right here, help. What is automatic configuration DHCP? This setting is most commonly used by cable operators. Oh my goodness. Now what if I change it? Oh, well, it didn't show anything here on the right. But isn't that amazing? Like right here, if you don't know something, DD-WRT already has all of these kind of explanations on the right-hand side of what something is, which I think is pretty fantastic. I had to hit the cancel changes button. So that's something I love about DD-WRT. So, you know, we've got the basic WAN connection set up, IPv6, which I have disabled right now because I'm just using this for demonstration purposes. DDNS. What is DDNS? allows you to access the network using domain names instead of IP addresses. Wow. So the service manager changes IP addresses and updates your domain information dynamically. And it even shows you a service that you can sign up for. Isn't that amazing for dynamic DNS? Isn't that fantastic? So, and that's really cool because, like, for example, you know, with your internet service provider, you may have a dynamic IP address that it's not static, it's dynamic. So your public facing IP changes every so often. And what if you need to VPN to your local network? Well, if you've got a configuration file on your computer, but it's set to the IP address that it was set to when you made the configuration file, and then all of a sudden it updates, you're kind of screwed. But dynamic DNS is really neat because you can actually have it set up to, like, I don't know, a domain name like coderedblog.io. And so, you know, you go to coderedblog.io through your VPN configuration file, and even though the IP address changes, the IP address updates with the domain name, and so you can still get into your network. So that's really cool. MAC address clone. Haven't messed with that. Clone WAN MAC. Wow. Okay. Advanced routing. Look at that. This is operating as a gateway. Now, this is something that's really important too, by the way. DD-WRT, you know, not only is it great for cybersecurity, but it's also great for just that customization that I was talking about, that control. So right now, this is set up as a gateway, like a full router, right? So it's got WAN into it. So, and then from there, it's a wireless access point as well as a switch because of all the Ethernet ports in the back. I can change this into just a pass-through access point, wireless access point that is behind another router. Or I can change it to, I can turn off the radio and I can make it just a strict switch. And it's considered a managed switch. By the way, managed switches are gold. They are absolute gold for cybersecurity because you know what you can do with a managed switch? You can implement a VLAN, and that's amazing. So yeah. So yeah, look at all this. Look at everything you can do. Oh my goodness. Show the routing table, routing policies. This is insane. So if you're a network admin, you'd be geeking out over this. I'm not a network admin. Like at all. I should not be a network admin. I've had to do network administration and I've screwed things up. I should not be a network admin. Okay. Switch configurations. Look at that. Look at that. VLAN. Now, if I just click the radio button, enable, look at that. So we've got the WAN port, right? It's green. It's going. I don't have anything plugged into the other ports. I'm actually connected to this on a wireless network, to this router through the wireless network. But look at that. Like you can configure VLAN. So I could put VLAN 0 and VLAN 1 on ports 1 and 2, and then ports 3 and 4 could be on VLAN 2, completely segregated. So what that means is that, like, for security reasons, maybe VLANs 0 and 1 I use for work-related stuff, and VLAN 2 is for personal stuff. Well, that means my personal device, it's kind of like having a guest Wi-Fi. My personal devices are not going to be able to talk to or communicate with my work-related devices. So therefore, I've got segregation. And for cybersecurity, that is great, right? So, oh gosh, I love VLANs. That's amazing. Networking. There's VLAN tagging because you can do VLANs with a tag instead of port VLANs. There's a big difference. Bridging. I'm just reading off the stuff that's on here. Some of the stuff I have no idea what it is, and I'm okay with that. Wow. Okay. Yeah. But this is nice, right? It's a GUI. It's a nice GUI. Right? Now here's the great thing. So if I go to wireless, I can set up the basic settings, right? And the service set identifier I put up was men of letters. Extra bonus points if you know what that's from. Extra bonus points if you know what that's from. But instead of a gold star, because I'm red, you get a red star. You know, the broadcast. Oh, I can add a virtual access point. That's really interesting. Now, yeah, so this down here, this is the wireless interface 1, right? 5 gigahertz. Wireless interface 2, 2.4 gigahertz. And we've got 802.11 AC. If you don't know what that means, AC is the most current protocol. I think it's the word it's used. Protocol for wireless connections. We used to use like 802.11a, and then there was B, and then G. I think N was in there at some point. This is all when we were like kids, right? So the boomers and the Gen Xers were dealing with that stuff. I just gave away my age. I didn't give away my age. You guys don't know how old I am. Leave me alone. I don't even know how old I am. But basically, there's a lot here, right? So this is one of the things I like. So first of all, let's go to wireless security. This is great. So I've got it set up to be a WPA2 pre-shared key. Why is that important? Well, first of all, with wireless security, WEP is deprecated. It's super easy to crack. It's super easy to break into. WEP should never be used. Then WPA came out. And WPA has a lower bit key encryption versus WPA2. So WPA2 has kind of been the standard, and PSK stands for pre-shared key. In other words, the password to get onto the wireless. And now there's even WPA3. Okay. But the really neat thing is that you can also do radius on this. So radius, I encourage you to look up what a radius server is. But essentially it's a server. It's an authentication protocol. It's an authentication protocol for accessing the network or resources or, things like that. It stands for Remote Authentication Dial-In User Service. That's what it stands for. Did I look that up while I was sitting here just now in this very second? Yep. Do I feel guilty about it? No, I do not. But basically, so it's a central server that whenever like a user attempts to access a network, right? Whenever a specific user tries to access a network, it actually does the authentication and then the authorization of the user. So it acts as a security gatekeeper. Now that's really different, okay? Because with a wireless network, when you hand out that password to get on the wireless network, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have the password, you're able to get on the network. But a radius server works differently because you have to be a user to be able to be authenticated onto the network. And not only do you have to be a user, but you have to be a user with the correct password to be able to be authenticated on the network. So it's not just what you know, which would be a password for a wireless network. It's also who you are, right? And obviously, like I'm sure you can steal the username of somebody if you want to get onto the network. But that's a radius servers are a big level of security. Radius servers are used in enterprise level networks to be able to access resources and things like that. So the fact that you can do a radius server and to be able to jump onto the wireless network is fantastic. That is fantastic. Oh, and it's enable Mac client. Look at that. So in other words, what's the Mac format? Yeah, that's fantastic. And then we've got a Mac filter. Okay. A Mac filter is something that I haven't seen a lot of when I've worked with just regular routers, but man, on here, a Mac filter, that's brilliant. So you can whitelist and blacklist network clients with a Mac filter, right? So what are the MAC addresses of the devices that are allowed on there? That's amazing because if you're using Mac filter, and guess what? If someone's got the password, but their device is supposed to be on the network, it's not getting on the network. Vice versa. Maybe you found devices that are not supposed to be on the network and you can blacklist them, for whichever SSID, whichever wireless SSID. So yeah, I mean, really it's just kind of point and shoot. What just happened? Looks different. There we go. So basically I did it. So basically it's just point and shoot, point and click, fuck, point and click, not shoot. We're not shooting anything. But yeah, you just point and click, and I mean, look at all of these different settings that Red has no idea what any of these mean. I have no idea what a lot of these mean, but it's cool to have this level of control. It's really cool. Wireless distribution system. Oh, you guys don't have help over here? Authentication type, radio time restrictions. Wow. Look at that. You can actually schedule the radio. So you can turn the radio to off if you don't want someone using the network while you sleep. That is fantastic. Oh, man. That is fantastic. I didn't realize that before. That's great. So this is, I mean, just right there, right? Because it's wireless. Cracking into wireless networks is not hard, and that's what a lot of threat actors do. Heck, it's what a lot of pen testers do. If you do an external pen test, you've got to be able to get into the network externally, and then once you get into the network, you're able to do things. So, being able to have that control of like not just the authentication, but turning off the radio, turning off the wireless on the device, on the router at certain hours, it's fantastic. So, real quick, before I get into some of this other stuff, one of the things I want to mention is the fact that DD-WRT comes with IP tables. Okay. So, with routers, there's a lot of different software firewalls out there, right? There's Windows Defender, there's pfSense, SonicWall, and SonicWall has their own like hardware firewalls you can put on enterprise networks. But then there's also some of the software, like a lot of people, especially with like Linux servers, they use what's called UFW, which is a firewall. But DDWRT comes with IP tables. And again, we want more features, right? The features on the router that I had, this capability was not, all these capabilities I just said to you was not on the router as was, but it's on there because of DDWRT. IP tables is kind of similar. So as far as a firewall is concerned, it has a lot more capabilities and a lot more full features than just, a standard firewall that you don't have a lot of control over other than just kind of like turning it on, right? So IP tables is just, it's a full functioning firewall that is very flexible. When you figure out how to use it, it works really well. You can do pre-routing with the network interface. You can do post-routing, but basically, yeah, IP tables. It's a very powerful firewall, and that's what DDWRT comes with. So again, that's just another boasting of the security feature that this has. Free radius. I don't know what that is. Oh, right here. Before starting the free radius server, support must be enabled. I don't know what that is. We're going to forget that. Right here, VPN. Look at that. All right. Now, some things I want to say here. And this is one of the things I love about DDWRT. So there are a lot of VPN protocols and services out there that are no longer considered secure. Not all VPNs are equal, okay? And if you don't know much about VPNs and you want to get into cybersecurity, please, like, for the love of fucking God, go study what a VPN is, because VPNs are not just used to protect your identity, quote unquote, or hide your IP address when you're at a coffee shop. Like a VPN is a big deal because a lot of companies use VPNs to access their servers and things with services. And I mean every company, like they VPN into, not every company, but they VPN into the resources such as like marketing materials and information about clients if they're doing sales and stuff like that. So VPNs are very, very important. And this guy, look at this. OpenVPN. Okay. And right here, what can we do? We can choose a hashing algorithm. Don't do MD5. MD5 is easily broken, but SHA-512, that's crazy. AES. AES is a very powerful encryption algorithm, as you guys know. But yeah, I mean, you can just enable this to have an open VPN server, and right there, it's got mitigations. So if we look up this CVE, And if you don't know what CVEs are, that's kind of outside of this video, but we can talk. Well, I can do a video on CVEs and what they are because that's really important. CVEs are basically published vulnerabilities, published security issues with different software and stuff. And right there, it's got a mitigation if you're going to use OpenVPN server, right? So look at that. You've got the CA certificate, the public server certificate. I can enable the OpenVPN client. So I can set up VPN access to this router from wherever I'm at. By the way, we haven't even gotten to the security tab. This is just, we're in the services. Oh, man. Look at this. We can set up network attached storage through here. Isn't that insane? Is that not insane? That's insane to me. You can set up the SMB, the Samba, which, that's SMB and Linux. That's, yeah. You can do file sharing on here, And obviously, routers don't have a lot of storage space, but, I mean, you can plug an external hard drive into the USB of the router. Ad blocking, speed checker. Is your Wi-Fi slowing you down? That's great. You can enable the speed checker service. I have never used the speed checker on here just because, there's something with cybersecurity. The more secure we are, the less convenient things are. So speed has not really been the biggest deal to me, but it is what it is. So, all right, let's see here. We got the security tab. Look at that. Firewall protection. It is enabled. We can filter cookies, proxies, Java applets. Oh man, ARP spoofing protection, invalid. Now this is a lot of what I'm showing you. Other than obviously I changed the name of the wireless and the SSID and the pre-shared key to get onto the wireless network. But a lot of this is what comes stock when you boot up DD-WRT and then you make whatever changes you want to make. I mean, this is just so much access. I can impede WAN denial of service and brute force attacks, whether it's through SSH, Telnet, FTP, which you should know, or at least go find out why Telnet and FTP are considered insecure protocols. So yeah, there's a ton of different stuff on here you can do. VPN pass-through. IPsec. So by the way, the VPN protocols, there's the point-to-point tunneling protocol. There's you can do SSL VPNs, which SSL VPN is not what you should be using. IPsec is really kind of like the gold standard as far as security with the VPN right now. So if you're going to set up VPN server on here, on anything, I like OpenVPN and I like the IPsec protocol. Just saying. So look at here. We've got access restrictions. Oh, man. You can define up to 20 access policies. Holy smokes, this is fantastic. I can block websites, Again, it's secure. Maybe you've got guest Wi-Fi on here, right? And there are some websites that are malicious or have had malware. Your friends or your people that are coming over that are getting onto your internet to use it, they don't know that. So you can just go ahead and block those websites. That is amazing. All right, so NAT and QoS. So QoS stands for quality of service, and NAT is network address translation. So right here, look at that, DMZ. You can enable DMZ right here. So a DMZ on a network, why is that so important for cybersecurity? So a DMZ is basically a demilitarized zone. So it's like I guess I'd kind of explain it as like a layer of abstraction before getting into the actual network and all the resources that are behind the network. So, quality of service. Yep, that's cool. Okay, yeah. Boy, administration, changing the login credentials. This is cool. You can do web access only through. So if you notice, like it comes standard, I have it set up on HTTP, but you can require HTTPS to be able to access it, which means it's being done through TLS, which means there's encryption behind it. If you're concerned about man-in-the-middle attacks. So yeah, there's a ton of different security features now, on the network just by using DD-WRT. And again, this video is not just to show you all the ins and outs of DD-WRT or show you like all the different things that we can set up, but it's really it's about the fact that you have more control. This is really easy to use. You can just click through these things and see. It happened again. Hold on, refresh. There we go. Fixed it. Keep alive management, sysctl. This is a very Linux thing, by the way. But yeah, and then right here, firmware upgrades. Yeah, we know. Backups. So you can do a backup and a restore of your DDWRT operating system. And that's something important to know as well, because, you know, every router, right? Every piece of firmware is different. And there are different versions of DDWRT depending on the actual physical hardware that the operating system is going on. So again, that's one of the reasons why I love DDWRT, is because there's so much information on their website about what router you're using. There's other network admins, cybersecurity admins, or engineers, people that have gotten on there that just do this stuff for fun, that, you know, they've come up into issues and they've said, oh, like this happened and that happened. And you know, the other moderators and people try to help and try to explain, you know, hey, you should try doing this, or hey, by the way, if your router is an R7000, then don't do the 30-30-30 reset, because it'll actually end up bricking it. You've actually got to do a reset this way. And they take these forum posts and they add it to the actual wiki pages of DDWRT as a part of the, you know, official documentation. So it's yeah, this is just, it's fantastic. I love what they've done here. I mean, right here, you can see like this router model is a Netgear R7000. So, and you can see the firmware version as of May 24th of 2024, the Linux architecture. Yeah, so you literally have a lot of control. And look, more, what's a MAC address? What's the firmware version? What's the current time? You know, this is all, yeah, this is just a very, very fascinating control panel for a router. And it just gives you a lot. And I know I've probably said that 18 times, but I cannot get over what DDWRT is and how much it gives you. And that's why, like, honestly, when it comes to cybersecurity, play around with it. You know, get on DDWRT, go look at some other tutorials, see the setups that people have done. One of the first networks I worked on, it wasn't a huge enterprise network, but it was an office network, a small office network, where we actually had we were able to get a device and got DDWRT onto it, and we had to set up a VLAN because they were on the same network, but they needed segregation of devices between their two, let's say, like business subsidiaries is what I would say, right? So we set that up for them, and we set up their firewall, and we set up another router with DDWRT on it that acted as the VPN server, so that when they traveled to their site locations, they could VPN and access the documentation they needed for their company. Like it's really important, especially, you know, when you're going to be setting up networks and worry about network security. And this opened up my world to networking, because I did not know a fucking thing about networking. I didn't know shit. All right. I thought I knew what I needed to know. Nope. I was way wrong. I did not understand how networking worked. And, I mean, hell, to this day, I'm still learning about networking stuff, but, yeah, definitely, like, go look at what other security engineers have done, how they've customized DDWRT, what some of the settings on there are. You know, what's the you know, most secure Wi-Fi protocol? Is that something that you really need? So yeah, that would be my suggestion. And yeah, I have nothing to say. I have nothing else to say. I have talked your ear off about DDWRT enough. Go play with it. And yeah, I guess I'll just go put my pants back on.